Good afternoon. My name is Xavier. I'm the coordinator of Pama Language Centre and lead linguist for the Pakwati and Ingenuikia language teams. On behalf of all of us at Pama Language Centre, I'd like to say that we're happy to be here on Larrakia country. I'm now honoured to introduce Michelle Major from our Kokopere Ancestral Language Action Team, who will present acknowledgement of country in her Kokopere language.
Pawayur, Pakokobera, Ngalinyan, Pangamaringon Yongor, Pakari Langen, Pama Language Center, Yongor Trem, Kokyikem, Ngen Patachalan, Lakanbao, Trem Ngen, Patambala Urend, Patapongol, Ngalinyan, Nyungar Kawanyama. Patangalen, Yingai Kari Yongor, Patapongol, Queensland, Patapongol, Ngalinyandu, Kurliwand, Pata Yingai Kari Yongor, Kale Wurar, Langen, Kongandai, Kalal, Patala Wudar, Urend, Lanyanem, Ngen. Pala Kokobera, Wakatal. Nyek Yikem, Ngen, Kat.
Pama Language Centre works with First Nation language communities across Cape York Peninsula and their diaspora to revive and maintain our ancestral languages. This heat map shows the regions of the world with the highest language diversity. As you can see, Cape York Peninsula is among the most linguistically diverse regions with over 159 known language varieties. All but one of our languages is severely threatened, and many of our languages now have no living speakers. In his book Revivalistics, From the Genesis of Israel to Language Reclamation in Australia and Beyond, Gilad Zuckerman calls languages such as these with no active speakers dreaming beauties. Pama Language Centre is a small, multidisciplinary language revitalisation team. Our team and collaboration network includes linguists, First Nations, ancestral language and culture experts, artists, musicians, technology experts, sound engineers, animators, project designers and project managers, scientists, dancers, actors, educators, filmmakers, puppeteers, writers and illustrators. Together we're working to strengthen transmission of our spoken languages and awaken our dreaming beauties to create a strong future for the First Nations of Cape York Peninsula. The type of collaboration we develop with each language community depends on the interests, skills and needs of community members, the opportunities and resources available to us and the vitality of the language. We work together in many ways to develop interconnected, productive and scalable projects that create their own momentum and lead to new ideas and possibilities. In this animation you can see projects growing out of projects and overlapping with other projects, all mutually supportive in some way or another. Our aim is always to support the development of a language and a speech community as a dynamic ecosystem. We employ new technologies to bring together the many facets of our projects, creating immersive, interactive language learning experiences for young and old. We use technologies such as augmented reality alongside traditional language learning methods, bringing stories to life and opening windows to ancestral country from the home and classroom.
Ngantan binna wan
Wandara papigini
Andara ngatenil orang angkan awuci Atu akan awuci
Pama Language Centre works with language experts to document their languages and to develop the strategies and learning resources they need to teach their languages effectively. We use creative engagement activities like songwriting and storytelling rather than traditional linguistic elicitation methods. We often involve students in creating their own learning resources. Over the years, Pama Language Centres developed strong collaborations with schools in Cape York and beyond, facilitating a variety of successful language support activities. Schools in Cape York Peninsula are increasingly keen to include education in First Nations languages. It's now known that strong school language programs promote improved school attendance and the mental and physical well-being of students, as well as strengthening the relationship between the school and the community. Sophie, Priscilla and Michelle will now show you how they're using animation and new technologies such as augmented reality in developing a Cockapare language program for Puliima School. I'll hand this over to Sophie.
Hello everyone, my name is Sophie Rendina and I'll be making a brief introduction about the Puliima's Languages Revitalization Project. Nowadays, people in Puliima recognize three main traditional language groups. These are Cockapare, Yiryaran and Kunjin. Like in many other communities, only a handful of elders still speak their ancestral languages. The younger generations are familiar with a few words and expressions, but in everyday life, they speak Puliima talk, the local Creole. Cockapare has been included in the Puliima State School curriculum since 2019. In the future, we hope that a language program can be developed for Kunjin and Yiryaran as well, but for now, language expert Priscilla Major and language teacher Michelle Major are teaching their own language and culture to the school kids. For now, we are focusing on the grades going from foundation prep to year 2, and they are delivering 3 weekly classes per year level. As a linguist, I have been working with Priscilla and Michelle for about a year and a half now. We have a lot to do, from documenting Cockapare as much as possible, to finalizing a practical orthography or spelling system so that we can read and write Cockapare easily. We are also developing the curriculum and the language learning and teaching resources for the language classes. Technology is helping us not only in developing language learning resources that are fun for the students, but they also help Michelle to have that extra confidence to teach Cockapare in the classroom, because Michelle is also a language learner. So that takes a lot of dedication and courage to deliver language classes at the same time as we are learning the language. And technology can help us to support her in this effort. So for example, we're using PowerPoint slides with audio clips and animations, as well as augmented reality resources. Michelle is now going to share a couple of teaching resources that illustrate a few priorities we identified for the language program itself. Firstly, focusing on spoken everyday language. Secondly, teaching kids how to respect their elders through correct language use. And finally, developing teaching units that are meaningful both linguistically and culturally.
We want to teach Cockapare in everyday conversations so that everybody uses it in and around school and outside school as well. This is the lesson about greetings that we use in class.
Puair.
Catnyan.
Pawayan.
Catnandu.
Ngandu.
Yen. Nyen.
We also want our kids to learn how to respect their elders in Cockapere. Using animations to teach how to greet their elders makes this more fun.
Jalali Pawayan.
Ket Ngandu. Pakanter Pawayur.
Ket Nyan Jalali.
Hawaiian.
Wangana Ket Nandu.
One of our teaching units is about body parts and kinship. These topics are related and they are an important part of our culture. We want to pass that on to the younger generations. We use Pama Language Center's augmented reality body parts posters alongside Mr. Potato Head and other games to make learning more interactive and fun and consolidate the kids' knowledge by teaching them traditional dancing while revising body parts. This is for the younger kids.
Rapako. Martial. Tamel.
We have also started working on some body parts posters for the older students using Pama languages anatomy template. This resource will also include augmented reality with animations and audio recordings of sentences about body parts and traditional artifacts. One poster of the body in front, and the other one is the back of the body. One of the face, and the other one is the whole face in June. The inside of the body and the skeleton part of the body too we teach as well. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Mrs. Bowen couldn't be with us today. Shannon Bow would like to speak about some of the resources Lillian and the Guguyimitir speech community have developed with Pama Language Centre and how resources like these benefit young families of the Guguyimitir diaspora. Sorry, Shannon. You can drive here.
Yura Wantara. How are you all? Nayukatu Shannon Bow. My name is Shannon Bow. Nayu Guguyimitir Gura Bachelor Bama. I'm a Guguyimitir and Bachelor man. Nayu Irgalka Yuran Gal Gokunu. I'm speaking to you all in Guguyimitir, which is one of my family's languages. Nayu Wabati Binalmanatanu Gokunu. I want to learn, become knowledgeable about Guguyimitir. I want to share with you a little bit about my personal language journey. So, when I was about 10 years old, so I grew up in a place called just outside of Toowoomba, which is in sort of southwest Queensland. And as I mentioned, on my mum's side of the family, we have connections to Guguyimitir, which is up in Cape York and Hopevale, and also Butchler, which is Gari, Maryborough in Queensland. And where I grew up in Toowoomba, it's a long way away from any of those places. But when I was about 10 years old, my mother and I, we went up to Hopevale. There's a few things I remember about that. One is that in those days, the only way to get there was on the Greyhound bus, and they literally take 3 different buses to get up to Cairns. And then when we got to Cairns, all the aunties and family would pile into a small bus and then head up on the old dusty roads up to Hopevale. And when we're up there for a week, and so we returned to Dapawara. So Dapawara is our family's estate up there, and at the time the elders were lobbying the government for the handback of our estate and other estates in Gukuyumathia, and they succeeded. That was unbeknownst to me as a 10-year-old kid, but what I remember is meeting my extended family, and we'd all be in the back of utes driving around. The other thing I remember is I got incredibly sunburnt, whereas they were totally fine. And but they were also talking in language. They would say, let's go and make a galka. And I'd be like, what's a galka? And they'd be like, spear, galka. And then when we were in the back of the ute, they'd be pointing at places and they'd say, that's a bicky hole. What's a bicky? And that's a pig hole. And so we camped out on the country, and then when we got back home from that trip, one of my senior uncles, who lived up in Hopevale with the family, he had sent to my mother a word list, which was of Gukuyumathia language, which was put together by the linguist John Haviland, and that was a gift for me specifically. So, and I would go through and I would see some of the words that my cousins were saying on this word list, and I had this word list with me for my whole life. I use it to this day, and so I've always known that the language was there. I've always had this burning desire to learn it, but it wasn't until I was 35 years of age that I actually got up the courage and thought, no, I'm going to do this. But I didn't know how to do it. But I knew that Uncle Des Crump was heavily involved in language, so I organised to have a coffee with Des, and he said, contact Karen at the Pama Language Centre, which is what I did. So I contacted her, and then through that I set up so a weekly session with Jan, the linguist with Pama Language Centre, and started that process of learning. And for me, the why was because that was part of my identity and me reclaiming that, but also because I have two young daughters who at the time were 3 and 8, and I actually wanted to share that knowledge with them. So this is where some of the resources that the Pama Language Centre has put together have been really, really invaluable. So like this book here. So yeah, so the books like the Guta, Juga Jugi, the dog and the chook, those books, I'd read those to my daughters. And if you've got young kids and you're trying to learn language and teach language yourself, you always go try and find different ways to keep them engaged and interested and talking about it. And I found that a challenge. And so having these fantastic resources and such a variety of resources has been really helpful. So
Wanda kuta. Wandara juki.
Kuta no liu eningalge.
Juki. Nundu wau ngayu balkanu. Kana Wesley. Balkala delen.
Juki. Wesley ngana balkal.
Ye Weslingan leta jai kura balkai.
Mulu Wesley wara ngapa bongal button ko yo ba?
Oh, ngayu nila gatil juki balkal. Juki. J O K E J O K E Juki. Yeah, juki.
So that one there, the Dutandini, the Red Road. So it's a series, an animated series that the Pama Language Centre put together. And the really cool thing about it is they've got it up on YouTube. So I was able to stream that directly to my TV. And so they were bringing this content out, particularly during that 2-year COVID lockdown period. So we watched every episode as it was released. And for my youngest, who was 4 or 5 at the time, she was really, really into that, really interested. So it was, again, a fantastic resource. I think that would be great for you to consider with the revitalisation of the work that you're doing with your own languages. Another big influence for me as well is that as I mentioned, I started off doing weekly sessions virtually on Zoom with Jan. That was really helpful. That group now has grown. We've got there's actually 2 now virtual groups. So there's one group of learners that are over in Perth, so other diaspora Puliima learners, and with my group there's 4 of us, and we've been catching up very regularly. So one's over in Berkeley studying a PhD in human rights, and another one's a fantastic actor that's based in Brisbane. So we one of the cool projects that we actually did together with the guidance of Mukai, Lily and Bowen is this project on one of the Cowboys. It's an NRL team. So the project was we interpreted one of their anthems into Puliima. So if you know the Cowboys, you'll know that Mrs. Bowen's son, Matty Bowen, he's one of the all-time greats.
Takal piuli Pama muntalka Cowboys ngatu Pama Kuragal ngatu nguyartana tawarmen natinu Cowboys ngatu Pama Kuragal ngatu nguyartana tawarmen natinu Jiwangar Ngantan uchingu burilil Tata puputir nundu pinalku Mintel Kura mukan mati kagura ngantan Dilin patal Cowboys ngatu Pama Kura galba ngatu nguyartana tawar manatinu Cowboys ngatu Pama Kura galba ngatu nguyartana tawar manatinu Cowboys ngatu Pama Kura galba ngatu nguyartana tawar manatinu Cowboys ngatu Pama Kura galba ngatu nguyartana tawar manatinu.
All right, so in summary, for me personally, like I said, opportunities to return home to country, to be able to access a word list and projects and resources like the Pama Language Centre have been critical. I think you wrap it up.
Thank you. Most of our projects involve storytelling in some form, either written or oral text, pictures, film, animation or song and dance. At our Writers and Illustrators workshops, we work with the First Nations authors to develop illustrated ancestral language picture books and other texts. Creative engagement like this supports language revival by helping learners remember vocabulary and grammar, supporting literacy, preserving cultural knowledge and history, and giving First Nations authors opportunities to express themselves freely in their ancestral languages. Song is also a highly effective medium for language transmission. Our songwriting workshops create important opportunities for speakers, writers and translators to work creatively with their languages and to create new texts in First Nations languages. Pama Language Centre runs 2 song-based language revitalisation projects in collaboration with schools and ancestral language action teams in 3 communities. Our Bakwati friends weren't able to be here today. There's our senior elder of the Bakwati Nation, Tenpole Creek, Agnes Mark, has asked linguist Rangnal Jansdottir to tell the Bakwati story on behalf of Agnes and her sisters Vicky and Susan, their cousin Celia, and Agnes's husband Johnny Mark. Super speed.
Okay, I'm Rangnal speaking as Agnes. So I'm Agnes Mark. My sisters Susan and Vicky and our elder cousin Celia and myself are the custodians of the Bakwati language. Bakwati was one of the first ancestral language teams to join Pama Language Centre. We wanted to revive our language, which has been silent for many years. Without the bravery of our grandfather Donald Fletcher, the Mpakwitli nation might have been erased from history and forgotten. Our grandfather was a Mpakwitli man who was removed from our ancestral lands at Tentpole Creek to Old Mapoon Mission with our people by the Department of Native Affairs. As a young man, he often escaped from the mission dormitories. He stole food and met with free Mpakwitli elders who still lived in the bush outside the mission. In this way, he learned and remembered his language. When Old Mapoon was burnt in 1963, our grandfather was moved to New Mapoon, a long way to the north. And 10 years later, the linguist Terry Crowley met the old man, and together they worked to record the Mpakwitli language. The information our grandfather recorded with Terry Crowley is making it possible for us to reawaken our language today. Grandfather also taught us about our land. He taught us stories about the past. He sang songs in our Mpakwitli language with us. We learned 4 songs in Mpakwitli, and for 50 years we have been singing his songs in memory of our grandfather. We didn't understand many of the words we were singing until Pama Language Centre helped us translate them using the word list recorded by Grandfather and Terry Crowley. Grandfather's gift of song is precious because it has preserved important information about how to pronounce the sounds of the Mpakwitli language. And by giving us his language and his memories, he also preserved a continuous link to the Mpakwitli nation and our homelands far away. These gifts are precious because they have given us something of great value. Our identity is Mpakwitli people, and we have held onto our grandfather's legacy through dark and difficult times. Since 2015, the 3 of us have worked with Pama Language Centre to publish picture books. We are all artists, so we have illustrated the books ourselves. Our picture books have been made into read-aloud ebooks narrated by us in Mpakwitli. We also work with Pama Language Centre to compose songs and make animated film clips in our language. From the words and memories our grandfather left us, we are reawakening our language. There are 2 thoughts we want to share about our journey. Every word in your language is a treasure. Sharing our language makes our languages and our people stronger.
Thank you. Pama Language Centre works with speech communities in many ways to maintain the critical connection between language, land and people. The term revivalistics, minted by Professor Gilad Zuckerman, describes a new holistic transdisciplinary approach to language reclamation, revitalisation and reinvigoration. A revivalistic approach includes many perspectives and creates a strong base for language action through conversation and information sharing between individuals, communities and disciplines. We feel that this term well describes the approach that Pama Language Centre is bringing to ancestral language support, and we're happy to call ourselves a revivalistic language team. Priscilla will now say goodbye in Cockapere. You can stay there.
Nhạc Anda ya kam Creo
Thanks everybody.